Welcome to Insights for Business Owners. And this episode, we have Chris Fredericks, who's president and CEO of Empowered Ventures, who's going to talk to us about M&A, but from an interesting perspective in that, there's sort of a social beneficial aspect to how he's doing it, especially benefiting employees involved with target companies. So Chris, great to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited to hear about what you're doing.
Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate you having me on.
Great. So why don't you fill us in a little bit about the company that you run and the unique way you're doing M&A?
Great. So Empowered Ventures is the business I lead. We are an ESOP holding company. So Empowered Ventures is a corporation, a holding company that is 100% owned by an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. And we could go into depth on what an ESOP is if you want. But we have grown through acquisition over the years. We're intentionally diversifying and building a diverse portfolio of separate operating companies. This all started from a business based in Indiana called TVF, Top Value Fabrics, that I was the CFO of back in 2010. And
Nice.
the business owner, the founding owner of TVF, was at a point where he needed to figure out what to do with his business.
Mm-hmm.
And he had explored a lot of different paths of ownership, selling to management, other things, private equity. He really
Yeah.
didn't want to do private equity for his personal reasons, and
Mm-hmm.
he had those attempts to sell to management kind of failed. And so he was feeling gun shy, and he asked me to help him figure out what to do with the company. After doing a
Wow.
little bit of exploration, I came across ESOPs, which
Yeah.
ESOPs are they're a retirement plan that owns the stock of the company, and then the benefit gets allocated to the employees over time, over a long period of
Right.
time. And so
Right.
we did an ESOP transaction. And with that, I also took over as president of TVF. And then over the years, from 2010 up until now, we've added about actually seven more
Wow.
companies, two of which
Wow.
were add-ons to two of our
Yeah.
other of our companies. So
Mm-hmm.
that leaves us with five businesses. And we kind of formed the Empowered Ventures brand to be, the acquirer to build this portfolio. But it's all one ESOP, ultimately one large group of employees in these five separate companies.
Wow.
And we intend to keep growing in this fashion going forward.
It's great. Fill us a little bit in on ESOPs. I know it's a very complicated
Yeah.
thing, and so you don't have to go, too deep, but just the basics, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of our listeners are not as familiar with those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ESOPs, they fall under the same ERISA DOL kind of code as
Mm.
401k plans. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
very straightforward to kind of imagine a 401k plan that instead of having cash and funds allocated
Mhm.
in it, that instead it owns just the shares of a private company.
Cool.
And this 401k, this ESOP, is a trust, a separate trust,
Mhm.
and it has an independent trustee usually who oversees
Okay.
the trust.
Nice.
But the ESOP owns however much of the company. It doesn't have to be 100%. It can be anything between 0 and 100%. Um,
Great. Yeah, yeah.
so and then business owners will sell to an ESOP as a way to create liquidity for themselves and set shares aside into the ESOP that will then be allocated over a long period of time to the
Mhm.
employees as a benefit. They're not
I
paying
see.
for it. A lot of times it replaces like a 401k match or profit share, and it becomes the primary retirement benefit of the company.
Of the company. Yeah.
And there are
Cool.
tax advantages for ESOPs, both for the ESOP company itself. So for example, we're a 100% owned S Corp ESOP.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that means we're a 100% tax deferred entity.
Wow.
Corporation will never pay tax.
Never pay. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Or there's also some ways that sellers can actually benefit from tax in the tax realm on the sale part. If you do
Yeah.
it's called a 1042 is one example, which is a tax deferral very similar to real estate, the way you
Mhm.
tax
Like
defer on real estate transactions.
1031
Yep,
kind of? Okay. Yep.
1031. So
Nice.
there's tax advantages to ESOP transactions, and about 250 to 300 ESOPs get created in the country every year, which is actually a kind of small number.
Kinda small.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's a great option for business owners who want to sell some amount of their company or all of it,
Hmm.
but kind of want to build into the future a different kind of future than just kind of selling to someone else. That's going
Right.
to do with it what they want to do with the company ultimately.
And that's kind of the key piece to this. And I think what makes you very unique in the M&A space is this does give, well, you can even fill me in, but it feels like it's sort of giving to employees and giving them, ownership stakes and
Yeah.
a piece of the pie. But fill me in on the kind of the goal there.
Yeah, it's a great question. Some people take it so far as to say it's charitable. I don't agree, actually. Like,
Mhm.
it's
Uh-huh.
actually you're selling for market value, so you're
Okay.
getting a fair
Yep.
value. It's not a gift per se, but it is a
Right.
generous act, I think.
I like that. It's a generous act. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of think for the future employees and your current employees that they're going to start benefiting from the company's success in a much
Yeah.
more powerful way.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of business owners, I think, like, crave their employees to think like owners. And this is one way to
Yeah.
kind of reinforce that
They
desire.
actually do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really neat thing. It's not the right fit for every company or every situation
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then obviously in our case, like any company can do an ESOP transaction on their own and just be an
Hmm.
ESOP company.
Right.
Or if an owner, likes the idea of employee ownership, but doesn't want to go through all the process of an actual ESOP transaction, that's where someone like us comes into play,
Yeah.
where you could
Yeah.
sell in a more traditional way. And there's others like us out there. I'm not saying just us, but
Yeah.
selling to an existing employee-owned company gets to the same outcome, but in a simpler transaction usually.
Yeah. And actually, now that I, try to think it through, how does that work? You approach, another company. Yeah. Tell me how that works, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
So
I'm,
in our
I'd like
case,
more.
for how it works with us, or in
Yeah. Yeah.
particular,
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, so it's very similar to any normal kind of buyout process with
Okay.
private equity or a family office or
Yeah.
whatever. We have a similar process to,
Yep.
where we kind of have early conversations just to see if there's, you know, alignment from both sides on what
Mhm.
we're looking for.
Yep.
In our case, we're usually looking for 100% buyout
Yep.
situations. We're not like a minority investor usually.
Yep.
We tend to work with business owners who are kind of at that point where they're ready to think about their own succession planning. They
Uh-huh.
they want to retire either soon or over the course of some amount of time. And so they kind of want help with that too, like someone to
Yep.
come in and help make that happen successfully. And they
Sure.
really like the idea of employee ownership, but
Yep.
for whatever reason, they don't really want to go down the path of doing an ESOP transaction on their own. So we
Uh-huh.
just start
Uh-huh.
to explore, and we'll of course sign an NDA, and we'll
Yeah.
receive information, and we'll provide usually an IOI, an indication of
Yep.
interest, which you and
Yep.
your listeners are super familiar with, and the
Yep.
typical process. Then it goes to LOI, then it goes to
LOI.
diligence, and then just the
Yep.
normal process. But I do like to think we bring a very personal touch approach. We're not
Yep.
just a financial buyer. We have kind of purpose in mind with all of
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
So, we really like to align and work with business owners who have the same kind of outcomes in mind. Like they're not just selling for the check, even though they want the money, of
Right.
course, they also want the outcome, which is their employees to become owners in this fashion.
And so like, yeah, obviously you fund to the seller, but their employees get some equity in your holdco, like
Right.
the ESOP holdco. And how does that
How
work?
does
So
that
is
work?
that,
Yeah.
yeah, how does that
Yeah.
work? Yeah.
So as soon as anyone becomes an employee of any of our companies, either as part of an acquisition or even if they just hire in to any of our
Mm-hmm.
companies, but it's the same thing. They join our ESOP, they become a participant in this ESOP, and then once a year, at the end of our fiscal year, all the current employees who have been there and meet the requirements, which is just, like being there for the year basically,
Mm-hmm.
they receive an annual allocation of additional shares, so
Wow.
of Empowered
Yeah.
Ventures stock.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I get it. So, wow. And that's just a benefit for being an Empowered Ventures employee,
Correct.
like a stock option, basically. It's a,
Yes. Yes. It's
wow.
stock, and it accumulates over time. Every year you get more, so the longer you stay, the compounding can kind of come into play.
Mm.
And then the way those shares are valued annually at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's an independent valuation firm that
Yeah.
every year will revalue the shares.
Wow.
And it's, we've had a nice run, a nice trajectory.
Yeah.
So folks have gotten benefit from just getting the shares, but then they've also gotten, the appreciation of the shares over time.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and then
That's
going to the
great.
very end, when they leave the company for whatever reason, a
Hmm.
retirement or leave for other reasons, those shares then become available to them to become liquidated. And in
Liquid.
our
Yeah.
case, we've always paid those out in full, but many ESOPs will do those over like some installment
Over
program
time.
or
Okay.
whatever,
Yeah.
but it tends to be relatively quickly. You get that cash over the course of 1 to 3 or 4 years usually.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So actually, so the seller gets all the money, but then you say we're actually going to go a step further and take care of your employees and give them
Yeah,
not only equity in their current company, but equity in a whole conglomeration, like, group of companies.
yeah.
I mean, the employees must love you. I mean, this is incredible, you know?
It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. What we
Yeah,
typically find when we go in and we announce the acquisition, like all when companies get
yeah,
sold, there's the big announcement.
right.
What we typically find is probably a similar amount of skepticism to any time a company gets sold because it's always a
Yeah,
scary thing.
scary,
Yeah,
very scary. Things are changing.
yeah,
And, whenever I hear about acquisitions, it's not good for not good.
yeah. And I don't know if this resonates, but I would even say that there's some amount of this sounds too good to be true. You're telling me I'm
Right.
an
Oh,
employee
yeah.
owner, so I'm especially skeptical now that you're gonna
Right.
come through with this big promise you're making.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then what we tend to find is that, a year later-ish or whenever that first statement comes out that says,
Hmm.
"Here's your first allocation of
Oh
shares
my gosh.
and the
Yeah.
value."
Oh, I love it.
Starting at that point, they start to be like, "Oh, I guess this is kind of a big deal actually." Because,
It really is. Yeah.
these
Yeah.
401k, if you compare it to a 401k, which is typically what, 3 to 5% benefit for most
Right.
folks in
Like the
any company,
match. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
match.
Yeah. Yeah.
The average ESOP is in the 8 to 12% range.
Wow.
And then
Really?
we've been kind of well in excess of that, like way
That's
above that.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty
Wow.
meaningful of what we're talking about.
Is this, I mean, it sounds like it's not for everyone, but do you find there's a swath of sellers that feel like this is really special
Yeah.
and it puts you to sort of the top of the heap in terms of buyers, like, because of this special aspect?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say, as you said, it's not for everybody, and it's not for every industry. It's like it's just it kind of the right situation, like a company that's just on a really high growth trajectory, and there's the multiples are going wild, because
Right.
it's a really hot industry. Like as an ESOP, we have a fiduciary responsibility to kind
Hmm.
of pay a fair market price, but we can't go out and compete with, the crazy offers
Right.
that some industries might be experiencing, but not all.
That's interesting. Wow. So even when with the acquisition, you have a fiduciary duty to the ESOP to
Yeah,
not go wild on
not
the
go
on the
wild.
purchase price.
Yeah, we still market truly in a sense, but it's kind of going to be we can get creative with structuring. Like maybe some has to be a little more on earnout or other
Mhm.
things to try to bridge, but that's obviously not always going to be enough to be fully competitive. But generally, what we find is a business that has a nice steady history and a nice solid growth trajectory, and an owner that really values the idea of this outcome and this partnership approach to their succession
Yeah.
planning too, which is key.
Yeah.
We also
Okay.
do. That when those three things kind of align, that yeah, we're pretty, we can find a really great fit with a business owner.
Yeah. And sometimes do you, are you not the highest bidder, but because of your approach, maybe someone chooses you, a seller chooses your offer?
Yeah, I honestly don't think we've ever been the highest bidder on any of
Wow.
the deals we've won.
Wow.
I would say we've always been reasonably, within the realm. I'm just gonna guess
Mhm.
10, 15%, within 10 or 15%
Yeah,
of
yeah. Yeah.
the high bids. But yeah, I don't believe we've ever been the high bidder. And in fact,
Amazing.
we also some of our companies haven't been in a process. We've just been lucky to find a direct connection with the business
I
owner
get it.
and do a transaction. Yeah.
Right, right, right. And you talked about that purpose. How would you define that purpose of what you're doing?
Yeah. So we've defined Empowered Ventures purpose to be to create life-changing well-being outcomes for all of our employee owners, just,
Wow.
our employee owners. And we believe that just being an ESOP and providing this benefit pretty much accomplishes that it's so meaningful, to
Hmm.
create some financial security for people.
Yeah.
That generally people have a hard time finding real financial security because,
Yeah.
it's tough sledding out there.
It's
Um,
tough sledding. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
that
absolutely.
we think kind of gets us there, but we also kind of take it further where we really believe in creating workplaces that people feel that ownership to, where they feel like
Wow.
their voice matters, where they feel like they're empowered to, act on behalf of the company and make good things
Hmm.
happen. And they, like, as we said before, kind of act like owners. And that creates a workplaces where people enjoy coming to work. There's a dignity of work kind of thing that we want to make sure
Wow.
we're bringing to the table.
I love that phrase. Yeah.
What's cool is we're obviously going to a business owner that already aligns with that is probably doing things already that make
Yeah.
their employees probably already feel and generally do proud to work where they work. And like,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
it's not like we're having to change things in our companies to a huge degree, but it's almost like
So,
hot sauce on the cultures. It can like really take it to the next level.
so culture really matters.
Yes.
Culture at the targets really matters.
Yes.
On your diligence, like that's imagine a
Yeah.
big
It is.
thing.
It is. I mean, we don't necessarily need it to be, one of these companies that's like winning the top places to work every year and like
Yeah, right.
isn't the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
newspaper for it. Which is awesome. I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
disparaging that, but a lot of companies are just good places to work. People are very proud to work there.
yeah,
And that's great. As long as like people are proud to work where they work and the good people stay, that's a good
yeah.
culture to me.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
that
mhm.
that's a good fit for us.
It might be hard to measure, but have you found greater productivity, greater engagement, like better ideas from employees because of this ownership feeling?
Definitely. I mean, you're right, it's hard to measure.
Yeah.
But a couple of data points would be like from when we've announced these transactions, we've never had any meaningful turnover in the first
Wow.
6 months of any key people. I mean, obviously there's been normal turnover in those, but
Yeah.
never like an exodus, especially of key people that could happen occasionally with a transaction. People
Mm.
have stuck around to say, I want to see what this is about. But then we also measure at EMPS, Employee Net Promoter Score,
Oh,
which is a way to
that's
kind of
cool.
measure like employees' commitment and belief in the business and kind of engagement, but a little different. Folks that are
Wow.
familiar with NPS, which is the customer version, the NPS score is
I don't
basic.
know either of those. I'm writing this down. This is
Yeah,
great. Yeah, yeah.
NPS is great. It's not a be all end all. There are detractors for some reasons, but NPS is a single question, which to a customer or an employee, which is how strongly would you recommend this to another customer or your family member? Like how strongly
I
would
see.
you recommend someone to come work here, basically?
Simple question. Yeah.
Yeah, and you end up determining if you have people that are for you, neutral, or detractors. And it's the people that are for you minus the detractors that's the score. So it
Oh,
really
interesting.
calculates like a really interesting view of the company and how
Yeah,
passionate
yeah.
basically or negatively, your people
Right.
feel about you.
Wow.
So we
Cool.
track that and, over time we can see that the longer our companies are kind of part of us and the more we've made progress, with the kind of supporting ownership mindset that this score, does go up over time.
Wow. And how do you like you've got the holdco, it's ESOP, but control and decision making is not just done by a huge committee of
Right.
employees, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're able to be nimble, right? Still, or yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
always a question for folks that are, a lot of times when people are exploring ESOPs, does this automatically become some sort of management by democracy? Is very
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
a question that comes up. And
Yeah.
this is one of the reasons I think ESOPs work really well is they're almost never implemented that way. It's really a professional kind of governance, professional leadership approach where, there's going to be a president of the company. This is in our case and in the case of most ESOPs.
Yeah.
There's going to be a president of the company. They lead the business with their management team. And, there's a kind of a typical hierarchical approach, just hopefully more of an approach that encourages people to raise their voice and have a say
Yeah.
and have agency in their business. But it's still very traditional. And then in our case, the president of each company just kind of reports to us. And
I see. Yeah,
we're
yeah,
out of
yeah.
the day to day. They're very much running
Oh, wow.
their
Really? Yeah.
business. We're more just
Wow.
staying aligned with them on, where do you want to take the company? Are we aligned on the
Yeah.
vision? Are we
Mhm.
aligned on kind of annual plans and things like that? And then we stay engaged like weekly, every other week in conversation with our leadership
Mhm.
teams. But again, mostly just to support them.
Yeah. Wow.
Leading a business is hard, and it's kind of nice to have support, someone to just talk to and say, "Hey, this is what I'm facing, and what I think I'm going to do about it." And it's like, yeah, that I think you should feel really confident about that. Or have you thought about this? That kind of approach.
That's great. I think it's such a game changer in, well, in business, but also in M&A, which can be, a little cutthroat sometimes. I think there's all types of
Yeah.
buyers, and this is like a really nice option. And I think it fits really well with a lot of owners. So how do the sellers find you? Because I know what's the best way to do that? Because I know they're people that be interested.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if anyone wants to actually get in touch, our website's empowered.ventures, and they can reach us
Cool.
through that, or email me, chris@empowered.ventures.
Great, because I know you are constantly looking for
Definitely.
other targets, and I think for brokers too. Hopefully some of the brokers that listen to us will check that out and realize there's another way.
Yeah, we've actually found that brokers that just like to have another viable, kind of different option for the right situation, that we might be a
Yeah,
good one to consider. So, yeah, definitely would love talking with any brokers as well.
that's awesome. I love what you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to us.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.